All right, let's just jump right in. We tend to think of ourselves as, well, one person, a single consistent self. But what if I told you that the key to your greatest energy, that feeling of truly thriving, comes from realizing you're actually so much more than that? I mean, think about it in your own life. You've got your professional self, right? Then there's your creative self, your parent self, the you that comes out on the weekends. Sometimes it feels like a total tug of war in your head. But what if all that complexity, all that seeming conflict, isn't a problem? What if it's actually a power source just waiting to be tapped? So this is where we get to the core idea, the overall self. And honestly, this is a game changer. It suggests your true identity isn't any one of those single voices. Nope. It's the entire symphony. It's what happens when all those different parts of you come together. They create something brand new, something way, way bigger and more amazing than any one part could ever be on its own. And here's the part that might surprise you. This isn't about getting all your different cells to finally quiet down and agree on everything. Not at all. The real energy, that amazing vitality we're talking about, is actually born in the friction, in the conversation, in that dynamic meeting point between all these different facets of who you are. Okay, so this might sound a little abstract. Let's make it super concrete with a fascinating real-world example, the author Jane Roberts. Now, Jane was a channeler. She would enter a unique state of consciousness and speak the words of a personality called Seth. And in the Seth material, Jane is often called by another name, Rupert. So what's so interesting here is the intense inner battle Rupert was facing. On one side, you have the writer self. This was her identity, She was a poet and proud of it. This self loved traditional inspiration, stuff she could really claim as her own. But then there was the channeler self. This was the part of her that produced all this incredible, unexplainable information from Seth, but it felt like a threat. It felt like it was undermining her authority as a writer, and she'd get really angry when people just called her a channeler, because it felt like it cheapened her own artistic talent. For the longest time, she was stuck. She saw it as a fight, writer versus channeler, and thought she had to pick a winner. But the huge breakthrough, the real turning point, was realizing the goal wasn't to choose one. It was to find the place where they could actually meet. And this just nails it. This was the solution. Seth basically explained, hey, you two aren't enemies. You're both working for the same boss, creativity. They were just different methods, different tools for exploring the exact same thing. One was familiar, the other was totally out there, but their ultimate goal, identical. So once she saw them both as part of her creativity, everything clicked into place. The channeling sessions stopped being an interruption to her real work and became a core part of her creative process. The channeler self started feeding the writer self these unbelievable ideas and perspectives. And in return, the writer self gave the channeler the artistic skill to make those ideas beautiful and understandable for the rest of us. They started nourishing each other. That's mutual vitality. That's the magic. Okay, great story, but what about you? How can we find our own other selves? Well, there's a really cool practical exercise from the Seth material we can try. It's actually super simple. Just grab any photo of yourself. That picture, that's your official self, frozen in time. But now look closer. I mean, really look. Ignore your face for a second and check out the little details. The shadows on the wall, the light in the background, the way your hand is resting. These are what Seth calls echoes of your other possible selves. Maybe a shadow behind you hints at a quieter, more thoughtful self that was also there. Or maybe a tiny little glimmer in your eye is the echo of a wild, adventurous you that was just under the surface. And here's the takeaway. That photograph is no longer just a static record of the past. It becomes a dynamic gateway. It's a meeting point where the you that was comes face to face with all the yous that could have been, and more importantly, all the yous you could still become. Now let's zoom out, because this exercise points to a much bigger, more radical shift in how we can view identity itself. It's a whole new worldview. Traditionally, we think of ourselves like a tree, right? We have one root, our childhood, and we grow up in a pretty linear, predictable way. But this new model suggests we should think of ourselves more like a rhizome, like a patch of ginger root or bamboo. A rhizome doesn't have a central starting point. It can sprout from anywhere, connect anywhere. It's not a single trunk. It's an ever-expanding, interconnected web of possibilities. And this brings us to this incredible concept, becoming. The idea is simple but so powerful. Your self is not a noun. It's not a finished thing. It's a verb. You are not a static being. You are in a constant state of becoming. Every moment, every connection is part of this endless, dynamic process of creating who you are. So, let's put it all together. You are not a finished product. You're not some single, stable identity locked into place. You are an open system, a living network of connections, constantly pulling in energy and information from all of your different selves, the ones you know well and the ones you're just starting to meet. And that is the true source of vitality. So I'll leave you with this final big question to chew on. If you stop seeing yourself as a fixed object and start seeing yourself as this endless process, this web of infinite connections, who will you allow yourself to become next?